Welcome. It is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel as we try to build this thing up. Training camp right around the bend for the Green Bay Packers and 31 other teams in the National Football League. I like to think that training camp is a good time to sort of experiment with different looks, different ideas, things you can use to your advantage to sort of throw a curveball at the opposition once the regular season rolls around. Now, the preseason is also a good time to really put those things into motion and see if they work, but then you're putting it on tape for 31 other teams. Maybe you want it on tape for 31 other teams, sort of an extra wrinkle that they have to prepare when they're scouting out your team for a potential matchup. And with the Green Bay Packers, they took, I want to focus on the offense today, and they took a core group of weapons on offense that had a lot of quantity. You know, there was a lot of quantity in the wide receiver room. There was good quantity at running back, even with the injury of Marshawn Lloyd, although Josh Jacobs was the bell cow. Tucker Kraft really emerged as a not just solid, a really damn good young tight end in 2024. And they added to that group with some premier draft picks. We know Matthew Golden in the first round, wide receiver out of Texas, Savion Williams, wide receiver out of TCU in the third round. And so I'm going to throw three ideas your way. Sort of looks that Green Bay's offense, with these new weapons, with a lot of the pieces they're bringing back into the mix, could throw at a defense that I think would just be really intriguing. You know, there was a formation we saw last year that had Malik Willis lined up at quarterback and Jordan Love lined up on the boundary at wide receiver. And so Matt LaFleur has shown throughout the years he will mix it up. He will give defenses different looks. And I'm not throwing anything that's, you know, crazy out there. I'm not saying line Romeo Doubs up at quarterback and let him fling the pill down the field to Jaden Reed. These are realistic ones, things that, you know, I think would just offer Green Bay situationally spots where they can be put in advantageous looks against a defense. And for the first one, I guess I would just call it the endless opportunities look. And for this one, I have Green Bay coming out in an empty set. You come out in an empty set, 5 wide. And I chose the 5 wide receivers carefully for this. This was also a look that I think Green Bay could experiment with in training camp. It does not include Christian Watson. Ideally, it would, right? But Christian Watson's going to miss a significant portion of the season. At least it looks that way after suffering a torn ACL in the regular season finale in 2024. And so for this idea, I have Green Bay coming out in an empty set with Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Matthew Golden, Savion Williams, and Mecole Hardman. So you have Reed and Doubs who have been on the team for a couple of years now, but then you have 3 newcomers, 2 rookies in the form of Golden and Williams, and 1 veteran that you brought in free agency from Kansas City in Mecole Hardman. So I have Green Bay coming out in an empty set, and we know Matt LaFleur with his offense, he likes motion, pre-snap motion, a lot of it. For this, I have Green Bay not necessarily going with pre-snap motion, but just changing the look for the defense. So you come out in an empty look, and everything's spread out, right? You're trying to make it a very shaky box at best for the defense, where it's a numbers game. And before the snap, you go from an empty set with those 5 wide receivers that I mentioned, and Jordan Love's in the gun, and you say, hey, Jaden Reed, come join me at the left hip, and hey, Savion Williams, come join me at the right hip. And so all of a sudden you go from 5 wide to you have 3 wide receivers out in the pattern, and 2 of them who have experience working in the backfield, especially Savion Williams in 2024 at TCU, all of a sudden to the left and right side of Jordan Love, who's in the shotgun. And so you go from a 5-wide set where a defense is like, okay, they're going to be throwing the ball to, well, now what the hell are they going to do? You know, they could hand it to Savion Williams. Savion Williams at TCU last year had 51 rushes for 322 yards and 6 touchdowns. He is a labeled wide receiver on the roster and on the depth chart. But he had 51 rushes, a lot of them out of that frog package at TCU. Savion Williams showed in 2024, just get him the ball. Just don't make it difficult. Don't overthink it. Put the ball in his lap. Let him go to work. Big frame, big body, good speed, really dynamic. You know, drops were an issue, things of that nature. You can just hand the ball. You cut out the middleman, right, in that situation. So you go from an empty set with 5 wide receivers, and there's some speed out there on the field, right? I have Mecole Hardman out there. He's a burner, vertical threat. Matthew Golden, burner, vertical threat. Jaden Reed really last year shined when he was in the slot and the defense was in zone coverage, man coverage. He had more difficulties, but there's speed there. There's versatility there. Now you have him coming to the backfield. You have Savion Williams coming to the backfield. And then you have Old Reliable and Romeo Doubs. And so I think this look for Green Bay would keep a defense guessing. All of a sudden they're like, how many guys, how much are we packing the box? Assuming they have 3-4 down linemen, maybe a linebacker in there as well. Now all of a sudden Jaden Reed and Savion Williams are joining Love back there in the gun. And Green Bay could just play the numbers game and say, hey, they still have they still have most of their bodies outside on the boundary and the slot, things of that nature. Hand it to Savion Williams, see what you can get. You could have a screenplay set up for either of those guys. You could take a deep shot with Mecole Hardman if he's lined up in the slot. And for this idea, I kind of had it as Mecole Hardman in the slot, Golden on the outside on one end, and then Romeo Doubs on the boundary on the other end. I just think it affords Green Bay a lot of different options, and that's why I called it sort of the endless opportunities look. You could run it, and you could pass it, and you could pass it to Golden deep. You could set up a screen for Jaden Reed once he comes and joins Jordan Love in the backfield. We've seen Jaden Reed be utilized in many ways by Matt LaFleur, including plenty of pre-snap motion. This look just sets you up and keeps the defense honest because they know, well, hey, one of those guys back there is Savion Williams. He ran it 51 times in 2024. He is a wide receiver by nature, by trait, by label, but he can run the ball as well. So I think getting that out there, an empty set, 5 wide receivers, and then shifting 2 of those guys into the backfield and Jaden Reed and Savion Williams, be a fun formation for Green Bay to sort of flirt with. And again, the defense wouldn't necessarily be looking at it like, okay, they're still for sure going to pass. Like there'd be a guessing game, sort of a chess match that unravels within that. Mitch, I'm on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Always appreciative of all the support. Going over some different looks, the Packers, just 3 of them that I think the Packers could be tempted to use maybe and flirt with the idea of throwing it out there, at least in training camp, to see how it looks against your own before maybe rolling out the red carpet and displaying it in a regular season game. The second one's pretty simple. I guess we could just call it it's speed kills. The speed kills look that Green Bay could do on offense. For this one, I am going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to wait to do it later. I mean, they can do versions of it during training camp, preseason, regular season, but I want Christian Watson back for this, and we know he will not be ready for the start of the 2025 campaign. But the speed kills look for me, ideally, I'm going to say you line up with 2 tight ends, Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave, but at wide receivers where the speed kills portion comes in. I want Christian Watson out there, Matthew Golden. Mecole Hardman would really be overkill for the speed kills look, but let's just go with Jaden Reed just because he has good speed. And so I say you line the trio of receivers up really any way you want. This look is really designed to cut them loose down the field with the idea that, hey, if a defense is in man, at least one of these guys, Watson, Golden, Reed, is going to be able to beat their man. You can send them on a go route, a streak, a skinny post, whatever you want to do. This is designed to be a longer developing play where one of those guys gets loose down the field, and maybe you disguise it with one of them coming on just a crosser underneath, and maybe that's open. You have Christian Watson on a crosser underneath. Boom, we'll take that. There's a 5-yard pass that could turn into a 25-yard gain. I will note too, you have Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave in there. Maybe you, instead of Musgrave, you want Ben Sims or Fitzpatrick, whoever gets that 3rd tight end spot. The reason I have the 2 tight ends in there is my idea is this is a speed kills look at wide receiver where you hope to beat a defense deep. And so it's a longer developing play, and so you want more blockers in there. And so I had Musgrave, again, if you want to sub out Sims, who's a better blocker, that's fine. And Kraft in there primarily as blockers. Maybe they end up releasing once they get, their first order of business as a primary blocker for a play on this play or on this look done, and then they can release out into a route, into a pattern. But ideally here, you give Jordan Love as much time as he needs, and you can sit there and say, well, did this work well for Green Bay last year? Proof's in the pudding. I thought there were a lot of inconsistencies and inefficiencies with the passing game down the stretch run of the regular season. Some of that's on Love, some of it's on LaFleur, some of it's on the wide receivers. Green Bay, I mean, the drops were insane. Yeah, Dontavian Wicks and Jaden Reed both in the top 5 for drops. And their drop percentage, especially for Wicks, was extremely high because of the targets he had compared to the other guys in the top 5. But Jordan Love last year, folks, kind of a stat that got swept under the rug just because most are bringing up the concerns they had with the passing game that last month and a half outside of maybe one or two performances. Jordan Love led the league in completions of 20-plus air yards last year. Led the entire NFL. He had 24 of them. Joe Burrow, Cincinnati's quarterback, was second with 20. And so, again, you're talking about passes that travel through the air, 20-plus yards. Nobody had more of them completed in the NFL last year than Jordan Love. The reason I think that's somewhat significant is we have to keep in mind he led the league in that category with 24 completions that went 20-plus yards in the air, and he missed 2 full games, and he missed a half of the Jacksonville game and a half of the Chicago game in Week 18. You're talking about a guy who really played 14 out of 17 games, still led the league in passes completed when the ball traveled 20-plus yards down the field. So this isn't a, flinging crap at the wall, let's see what sticks idea. This is, hey, Jordan Love can sling the rock, He can sling the seed. And he proved that last year, deep down the field. Now you add another guy into the mix, into the equation, and Matthew Golden, who has that 4.2, whatever it was, speed. Was it a 4.23, something like that? Crazy speed, 4.29? I'm going to look that up. But you add him to the equation, and it's just another thing that Matt LaFleur has at his disposal. 4.29, 40-yard dash for Matthew Golden at the NFL Combine. And so for this look, I'm saying speed kills. You get Watson out there. You get Golden out there. You want to sub in Hardman for Reed because you think there's more speed there. That's fine. I put Reed out there. Jordan Love led the league in completions, 20-plus air yards down the field. Of those completions, by the way, again, there's a reason I'm choosing the group that I am out on the field for these looks. Of those 24 completions, 8 went to Reed and 5 went to Watson, 13 of the 24. So choosing them for the speed kills look that I'm doing, it was intentional. And again, now you put Golden out there and you kind of give a salute and you say good luck to a defense. So that's another look I would like to see. Just speed. I think Green Bay already had speed, primarily when you look at Christian Watson, and big frame with him too, and a smaller frame with Reed, but there's some quickness there. It's definitely some speed with Reed, but now you get Mecole Hardman coming over in free agency and Matthew Golden in the first round, and there's a lot more speed in that wide receiver room for Green Bay. Last one I wanted to look at, again, these are just things I would like to see Green Bay maybe try out in training camp, preseason, before rolling it out in a regular season game, keep a defense guessing. This one is really just called, I would say out of the three, this one probably has the slimmest chance to be used in the regular season for a couple of reasons, but I'll just call it the are they doing what we think they're doing look. I've seen this one thrown out on Packers social media as an option. Again, it circles back to something that we saw last year that I mentioned before. It's Savion Williams in that frog package. It was so damn good at TCU, and I know NFL is a different beast. You remember when the Miami Dolphins, I think it was with Ricky Williams and Ronnie Brown, the Dolphins had that Wildcat package way back when, and for a couple of weeks, I think it was, a couple of games, maybe a few, the league was like, holy shit, how do we stop this? But they just kept running it, obviously, but it was different looks, read options with Ronnie Brown, Ricky Williams. I don't even know if they ever passed out of it, and eventually the league caught up, and they're like, okay, boom, and the Wildcat, really dipped off after that. I think with Savion Williams and that frog package at TCU, it was fine, dandy. At the NFL, can it work? Well, you're not going to, roll it out there for a full series. I'm talking about throwing in a one-play wrinkle, maybe on a 2nd and 6 or something like that. I think if you roll it out on like a 3rd and 3, everyone knows you're going to be running the ball. But for this, are they doing what we think they're doing? Look, for me, you have Savion Williams lined up at quarterback, which some of you are going to roll your eyes. I get that. Keep in mind, was it 3 or 4? Tucker Kraft had 3 or 4 4th and 1 conversions where he lined up under center last year. Everyone knew they were running the ball, and he converted anyways. Tucker Kraft, your tight end, lining up under center, taking a snap and diving forward. And so for this look, I want Savion Williams lined up in the gun at quarterback, but where it gets really, really fascinating for me is I want Josh Jacobs to one side and Marshawn Lloyd to the other. Marshawn Lloyd is getting, his name isn't being mentioned enough, and I get it. A rookie last year that missed damn near the whole season, Couple injuries early on, right when he was ready to come back late in the season. Appendicitis puts him back on the shelf for the rest of his rookie campaign. We hardly saw him. But Green Bay didn't use a 6th, 7th round take-a-flyer pick on this guy last year. Marshawn Lloyd was a 3rd-round pick out of USC. He is very dynamic when you get the ball in his hands. I'm excited to see, amongst these, returning weapons, and then if you want to label them as like the new toys for the offense, right? Everyone's talking about Matthew Golden and Savion Williams, and I get it because they're the new guys, 1st-round pick, 3rd-round pick in this April's draft. Marshawn Lloyd cannot be forgotten about. 3rd-round pick last year. We just didn't really see him as a rookie because of multiple injuries that really derailed his rookie season. You talk about a formation here where you can have your bell cow line up at running back in the shotgun, and you have Savion Williams at quarterback, and you have Marshawn Lloyd to his right. The defense is going to be thinking, what I called this look. They're doing what we think they're doing, right? They're going to run the ball. But where this gets interesting is, even if Green Bay's running the ball, and I would line Jordan Love out on the boundary, because it at least presents the idea that, hey, they could try a double pass here. I mean, it'd be really crazy and probably a low percentage look, but they could try a double pass. And so you put Jordan Love out there, and I would put on the other side Golden and maybe Dontavian Wicks, since we haven't used his name yet. And so you have Golden and Wicks on one side at wide receiver, Jordan Love at the other, and then in that shotgun look, you have Savion Williams at quarterback, spot he was very familiar with at TCU when they ran the frog package, and you have Jacobs to either his left or right, and Marshawn Lloyd to the other side. Defenses will guess run. Having Love out there at least threatens the idea I mentioned of that double pass, but it's the guessing game. The defense can guess run, that's fine, and in all likelihood it would be a run, but what kind of run call is being made and who's getting the pigskin exactly? That's what the defense sort of has to decipher, and they have to decipher it very, very quickly, because Savion Williams can take that snap, he can keep it himself. He can take that snap and run a read option with Josh Jacobs. He could just hand it off to Marshawn Lloyd. They could run a version of a triple option if they wanted to, right? But the defense can say, hey, we think they're running the ball. Let's sell out on the run. That's fine. Who's getting the ball? When are they getting the ball? What's the run play? All of that has to be answered very quickly. And so, again, this isn't something that I want to see every week. This isn't something that I'm suggesting, hey, try this in training camp and then roll it out for 6, 7, 8 plays on a given Sunday. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I am merely suggesting this is a look that, again, you get it out there early in the season, just one play. One play, week 1 against Detroit, week 2 against Washington. You come out and you have a version of this frog package that Savion Williams ran at TCU, and you put in the backfield with him Josh Jacobs, your bell cow, and Marshawn Lloyd, your dynamic 3rd-round pick from a year ago, and all the defenses the rest of the season, when they're preparing for Green Bay, they're going to have to spend a little more time, and that matters. They're going to have to spend a little more time saying, hey, they did show this, they ran this, and let's say it's successful. Let's say it's a read option, and Savion Williams reads the end, and the end collapses in on Lloyd or Jacobs, and he pulls it out, and he runs it for 8, 9 yards himself. And that's the only time we see it all year, maybe week 1, week 2. A defense still has to prepare for Green Bay the rest of the season if they pull that early. Like, hey, they did show this look with Savion Williams lined up at quarterback in the gun, and he had 2 running backs back there with him, and it worked. They got 8, 9 yards. Like, here's what they could do out of it. Here's the variety of different options they could do with such a formation. And again, it's just making things harder for a defense, making a team have to prepare with that extra wrinkle. And I wouldn't mind seeing it. I don't think it'd be like a complete disaster scenario if you did it once early on in the season. Put it on tape, right? I don't know if this is if this holds up like factually, but I do remember, I don't know who it was. There was a college coach. Who was it? It was a Big Ten coach. It doesn't matter. It was like 5, 6 years ago, and a team ran like a fake punt early on in the season. And I don't know if they went on to win, lose the game. I don't remember if the fake punt worked, but the coach afterwards was asked about it. I remember seeing the clip on Twitter, and he had mentioned, like, well, now every other team we play the rest of the way has to worry about us running a fake punt at some sort of time. Like, yeah, we gave the look. We showed that, hey, we'll fake the punt, but now every other team has to worry about that. It's in the back of their mind. You put something like this in the back of every defense's mind the rest of the year, if you run it once early on, just makes them have to prepare and spend more time on something else that to them they could look at it and be like, this is a bit tedious, but they could throw it out there. And so those are my 3 looks. The first one is the endless opportunities look. You come out in an empty set. Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Matthew Golden, Savion Williams, Mecole Hardman. Before the snap, you shift you shift and you send Reed in the backfield and Savion Williams next to Love. Now all of a sudden it's could be a run, could be a pass, and you have some burners out there with Hardman and Golden and Old Reliable and Romeo Dobbs. The second one is the speed kills look. 2 tight ends in there to block, longer developing play. Maybe they release out after they block. Tucker Kraft, and then take your pick. You want, Musgrave could be in that speed kills look because for a tight end, he is certainly a vertical threat. But his primary obligation on this play is to block. But maybe he releases out on a streak or something like that. And you also in that set I had Watson, Golden, and Reed. And the third one is, are they doing what we think they're doing, which is Savion Williams, that frog package look, but you have Josh Jacobs and Marshawn Lloyd lined up in the shotgun with him. And the defense is thinking they're going to run, but they have to figure out, again, where it's going, who's getting the ball, all this other stuff that Green Bay could throw as a loop in pre-snap, after the snap, if it's an option play, a read option, things of that nature. And then I had Love lined up on the outside on one end and Golden and Dontavian Wicks on the other. Let me know what you guys think. These are always fun ideas to sort of throw out there, experiment with. I just think Green Bay has the quantity this year blended with good quality to really, really try out some different looks that maybe we didn't see last year because they didn't think they had the personnel to do it. They certainly added some speed and plenty of versatility, primarily with that pick of Savion Williams in the 3rd round. Those are 3 looks that would be fun to see in 2025. Let me know what you guys think. It is Mitch M on YouTube. Always appreciative of all the support. We'll see you next time.